Hey everyone, today we are in Tombstone, Arizona at the infamous or famous Boot Hill Cemetery. Now I have to preface this video in that there's some markers in here such as this one that we don't know are real. There's actually no records of this one right here. And this is Lester Moore, the famous one you see in other Boot Hill cemeteries or even Old West exhibits, museums, theme parks, stuff like that. I see it in Halloween decorations. You can buy headstones like this. Many people just make it. So that's one of the things about this cemetery is it is a tourist attraction. So some of these could be made up, such as this one. The others, they don't know who they are. They're marked as unknowns, but they also don't know exactly where the graves are in this cemetery. They could be off, but they think they have it right within a couple feet or three. That's what I was told anyways. Regardless of what's in here, whether it's right or not, it is an interesting one to visit. And if you're into cemeteries, this is a big one that you should come if you get the opportunity. If not, sit back and watch this video. I think you'll enjoy it. There are some interesting stories in here, whether they're hearsay or they're real, but they are kind of sort of the Old West legend. So this is the grave of Emmett Crook Nunnally, 1884 to 1946. And it says here in this brochure down here, with the help of the townspeople, he spent much of the last year of his life seeking to restore as much as he could. And this old cemetery was where he requested to be buried. J. Gardner, 1882, he was shot by Kellogg. 2 saloon men were also indicted for his killing. Down here at the very end is an interesting one. It stood out to me anyways. But it says Johnny Blair. There's no date of death or anything, but it says that he died of smallpox and a cowboy threw a rope around his feet and dragged him to his grave. This is an interesting one. It says Johnny Wilson shot by King. There's no date of death on it or anything, but it says 2 gunsmen's discussion of the fastest way to draw ended here. This one is Hancock, shot in 1879, shot by John Ringo when he made a bad remark about some women. This is Guadalupe Robles, and he gave shelter to some robbers, and one of whom was his brother, and then he was shot when officers came to arrest him. 3-figured Jack Dunlap, shot by Jeff Milton. Dunlap was one of the band of train robbers attempted to rob an express car which Milton guarded. He was critically wounded and his friends left him to die. He was found and brought to Tombstone where he lived long enough to inform his friends. This is Dutch Annie, and she died in 1883, and it says that she was sometimes called the Queen of the Red Light District. This is Joseph Thomas, and he was shot in 1881. He was a teamster for Scherrer's lumber wagons and was found with 4 bullet wounds in his body. Indian Joe, another teamster, was believed to have killed him. Both teams were found and abandoned by the roadside. This just has a last name, Colleen, shot by Frank Leslie in 1880, the results of a disagreement over Colleen's wife. Leslie married the widow. So this one right here, there's no details. It just says that he was shot. McNemony. So there are several graves in the cemetery where they died in mining accidents, and then there are others that just say shot and there's no reason. This is one of the ones that they do know, I guess. Cowboy Bill King, shot by Bert Alvord. That's what that says on that marker there, too. This is another one that was shot by Bert Alvord in 1885. And this is 6-shooter Jim. The marker's kind of faded away. It's just kind of written in Sharpie on there, but it says the Kansas Kid. And he was a cowboy killed in a stampede. So this is an interesting one right here. Harry Curry. And he died in 1882. He was killed by Indians, it says. And then if you look on the brochure, it says he was killed with Seymour dye while hauling hay. This is one of the famous ones from the cemetery. Here lies Lester Moore, 4 slugs from a 44, no less, no more. And you see this grave in other Boot Hill cemeteries, and even in theme parks. It's popular to have it around Halloween time. And it's one of the ones that is disputed on whether or not he is even a real person. Here it says that Moore was a Wells Fargo agent at Naco and had a dispute with a man over a package. Both died. And it's just information from an old resident. But one of the things about this cemetery is these graves are not exactly accurate. Some of them are made up just for tourism reasons. And then some of these graves, they don't know if they're in the exact spot, but they think that they're pretty accurate, is what they've said. You know, within a foot or two or three. So take it for what you will. That is one of the famous ones that people come here to see. Don't really even think it's a person. This says M. McCarty, 1882, and he was shot by a man named Poplin. So I'm sure if you've watched Tombstone or the various other movies or read books, I'm sure you're familiar with this, and it has a lot of coins and dollars on this one, but this is Marshall Fred White, 1880. He was shot by Curly Bill. He was accidentally shot as he started to take Curly Bill's gun. This took place on the lot where the Birdcage Theater now stands. A lot of stuff on there though. A lot of tokens of remembrance, coins of all kinds, dollars. There's a wreath up there. Pretty interesting to see that one though. The coins are even up there in the wood marker here. Placed them in that. See a couple bracelets and all sorts of stuff. This is an interesting name. It's Stinging Lizard, and it was shot by Cherokee Hall. Douglas Lilly, 1881, killed. It says Lilly was a driver for the Sycamore Water Company and was thrown from the wagon, trampled by the horses, and died instantly when the wagon ran over his head. This is Charlie Storms, shot by Luke Short, 1880. Guns blazed again when these two gambling men met. Storms was shot in the front of the Oriental Saloon where Short dealt cards. Simon Constantine, killed in 1882. He and Thomas Kearney were blown up in a blast, it says. This is Joseph Ziegler, murdered in 1882. Ziegler, age 27, was shot one night through the left breast and lived only a few minutes. He and Ed Williams, who shot him, were miners and had been quarreling while that working day. The murder took place behind the old ice house near the corner of Tough Nut and 5th Street. Alfred Cantrell, shot in 1881. Old man Cantrell was murdered by a man named Brown, who later hanged for his crimes. M. McAllister, or Happy Jack as he was known, suffered from a lung injury when he was shot in a fight over a piece of land. He was sent to Tombstone to recover but died of the old injury. This information was provided by his grandson. This is Seymour Dye. He was killed by Indians in 1882. Dye, age 35, and Harry Curry were woodcutters. This day they were bringing in a load of hay when they were shot by Indians who, after their victims had fallen from the wagon, dragged them for an additional 150 feet. Here's another one of these graves that's controversial on whether or not it is actually real. It says, "Here lies George Johnson, hanged by mistake in 1882. He was right and we was wrong, but we strung him up and now he's gone." So that is one of the ones where you have to wonder if it's a real person or not. These records are kind of sketchy. It's kind of hard for the time period, but it's very touristy sounding. This says in memory of Mr. Peel, born May 31st, 1854, and died March 25th, 1882. And it says he was a young mining engineer who was shot one night in his office as he worked late. Suspicion fell on Zwing Hunt and Billy Grounds. This one right here, Billy Kinsman, he was shot by a woman much older than he, who was jealously in love with him, and this information came from his niece. There's no other information on this one other than Red River Tom, shot by Ormsby, which is on the marker and the brochure that I'm carrying. This name is interesting. Alfred Packrell. Makes me think of Alfred Packer, which I did a video on, but it says he died in 1882. He was English, and he was a young miner, age 24, who died of inflammation of the bowels. This is Darren, shot by Slaughter. Darren was shot when Slaughter sought to arrest him for his part in a train robbery. This is interesting. These two are kind of elevated in a rock formation that forms a border, and it's got cement with it. And anyways, the name is Ben Scott, 1883, and Al Bennett, 1883. And the brochure says that they were teamsters. and they were ambushed by Indians. This is William Grounds. He died of wounds, 1882. He was shot in the face with a shotgun by one of the officers sent to question him in connection with the murder of M.R. Peel. We saw just a little bit further down. This is row 4 right here. I'm kind of going backwards. I started on row 9 and we'll work our way to row 1. They wanted you to start at row 1, but I like to do things differently. But this is a grave here, but there's no marker at all on this one. A lot of these in the cemetery just say unknown. But this is an interesting one. I like these ones with the fences around it, so definitely a nice one. And it's got a bunch of rocks piled up on it still. But this is Mrs. Stump. She died in childbirth in 1884 from an overdose of chloroform given to her by the doctor. And this information was from her family. Interesting little cactus there. It's got some big thorns on it and some red berries. This is Frank Sorrow, and he was shot over his mining claim. Gotta say, it is a pretty view up through here though. Some houses over there on the other side of where the cemetery is. But it's pretty up here. Nice day too. This one right here is Hilly Hickson, died in 1882. And the brochure says, it was said that death never took a holiday in Tombstone. On this day, Hilly, a schoolboy, fell while walking on a pair of stilts, injured his back. And he seemed only slightly injured, but the next morning he died suddenly with a spasm. This is Thomas Kearney, 1882. Kearney and Simon Constantine were blown up by a blast. Someone's placed a necklace there of some sorts. It's got some pull tabs or... yeah, pull tabs. I don't know. Horseshoes maybe. That's interesting. I don't know what that is or what it means. John Gibson, 1881. And this is another teamster that fell from his wagon and was crushed when the wheel of the heavy wagon rolled over his head. This one says May duty, 1881, diphtheria. So they're pretty interesting here. This is row 3 at the start of it. Not much information here other than John Beether, and it says that he was hanged. It's all the information that's listed there besides the date, 1881. Ernest Brodeen's 1882, he was murdered. It says he was a miner and a native of Germany. He was found dead in his cabin with 4 bullet wounds in his body. Suspected of the killing was his partner with whom he had been quarreling and who had now disappeared. This is a teamster, no name given, but it was killed by Apaches in 1881. See, there's a lot of cactus in the cemetery. J.D. McDermott, killed in 1882. His spinal column was fractured when his horse fell from him while crossing the San Pedro River. This just says Rook, which I'm assuming is the last name, shot by a Chinaman, it says. This occurred in front of the Yaples store on Fremont Street, now the Wagon Wheel Inn. This one right here is a large marker, and it says John Heath, taken from the county jail and lynched by Bisbee mob, February 22nd, 1884. He was called the leader of the 5 men who were legally hanged and was said to have planned the robbery. He was hanged from a telegraph pole a short distance west of the courthouse. So there are 3 graves right here. This one says Dan Kelly, 1884. Bill Delaney, 1884. And Tex Howard, 1884. When you look in here, it says they were legally hanged March 1884. These men were found guilty of killing several people during the robbery of a store in Bisbee. They were all hanged on the scaffold in the courthouse yard. So there's some other names there listed that either they're here and they don't have a marker, or they're just not in the cemetery, or they don't know where they're at. I don't know. Okay, here's the other 2. This is Red Sample, 1884, and Dan Dowd, 1884. So that's all 5 of them. It's interesting. There's sort of an indention in the ground there in between these 2 graves. There's also an indentation in between those little trees or bushes. I'm not sure what those are. So I don't know if there was another plant and they dug it up, or there's an actual grave, but there's some bigger rocks, and typically you see the bigger rocks around it. So these are all unknowns right in through here. There's unknowns throughout, and I'm just kind of reading some of the ones that supposedly died a violent death. This one right here is Dick Toby, and it says shot by Sheriff Behan. There's a nasty looking gnarly bush or plant growing right in front of it with some huge thorns on it. This one right here is William Claiborne, shot by Frank Leslie in 1882. Claiborne, while drinking, sought to settle real or fancied wrong with Leslie. This took place in front of the Oriental Saloon where Leslie tended bar. This is a different one. It just says Margarita, and then there's a cross right on the marker, but it says she was stabbed by Gold Dollar, and they were both dance hall girls, and they were quarreling over a man. Obviously, Gold Dollar won. Joseph Wetzel, he was stoned to death by Apaches. His friends were not far away, and it was thought that the Indians wanted to avoid attracting their attention by shooting him. So this is one of the few ones with a fence in the cemetery. It's a white picket fence. And it says in memory of Frank Bowles. Born August 5th, 1828 and died August 26, 1880. As you pass by, remember that as you are, so once was I, and as I am, you soon will be. Remember me. There's people that place coins on there and stuff like that. Looks like a pipe too or something. Let's see what this one says. Okay, it doesn't say anything, just a foot marker. Didn't see anything on this side. No, but the additional information on him is that his horse became frightened and threw him off. This caused the rifle to discharge and badly injure his knee. He lay in camp for several weeks without medical attention, and when friends took him to a doctor for amputation, it was too late. And this information was given by his daughter. This one is John Hicks, 1879. He was shot by Jeremiah McCormick, superintendent of the Lucky Cuss mine, and it was a saloon brawl. This is James Hickey, shot by William Claiborne in 1881. He was shot in the left temple by Claiborne for his over-insistence that they drink together. So this is one of the big ones to see here, and there's actually three. You can see this upright marker. Billy Clanton, Tom McLaury, and Frank, his brother, murdered in the streets of Tombstone in 1881 in the OK Corral. Well, sort of. That's what the movies and books have you believe, but it is near there, and it is in Tombstone actually. But these are some of the big ones to come and see. They were all killed on October 26, 1881 in that infamous or famous gunfight. This is Newman Haynes, Old Man Clanton, killed August of 1881. You can see a Confederate States there, and there's a little marker saying that he's a veteran. And there's been some coins and flowers and stuff like that left here. So when you come here, they want you to start on row 1, which is right here, this first one, Rodriguez Patron, 1882, and it just says in the bulletin that he was stabbed. I actually started on row 9, so we're doing this backwards. And then we have an unknown, and he was just found in an abandoned mine at the bottom of a 60-foot shaft with of the Minute Mine. He was well dressed, indicating that he was not a miner. No identification of any kind. This is what it looks like. Check out this view over this way. This is Florentino, 1882, and he was murdered, found dead with several bullet wounds in his body, and he's sometimes called Indian Charlie. He's got a really dead-looking thorny bush there, but that little cactus growing there, or whatever it is, some kind of succulent. There's 2 of them. Pretty interesting. A lot of desert plants that I'm not used to, being from Oklahoma, so I am enjoying that. Van Houten, 1879, he was beaten in the face with a stone until he died. Trouble was over his mining claim, which he had not recorded. So Tom Waters was shot in 1880, and he was the father of Eva Waters, and likely the one that TJ Waters shot over the color of his shirt. This is Charles Helm, 1882, and he was shot by William McCauley, two hot-tempered ranchers who disagreed over the best way to drive cattle, fast or slow. So this one right here says the Haldeman brothers. So is it 2? Is it 3? Don't know, but hanged November 16th, 1900. So maybe it's just 2. I'm not sure. I don't know if they know. A lot of these died of different diseases, like that one is meningitis, but we have all the other normal things of consumption and all the other diseases that were around at the time. Olo Lucero died in 1882. He was killed by Indians, is what this brochure says. This is Peter Smith, killed in 1882, as it states on the headstone there. He was age 23, a native of Germany, and he was struck on the back of his head with a poker and killed by Thomas Donald, or Doland, during a fight. That's what it says. There's 2 names there. This is just the history that they are providing. So, and I assume that that's his wife or a relative of some sort, because there's kind of a cement border around it with some rocks. But Mrs. H.C. Smith, 1882. So I'm not sure how the relation is. If she remarried a brother, or I don't know. A lot of graves. These are all unknowns right through here. So until you get to this one's not an unknown. It does say Jasper Vaughn, shot in 1882. No other details. Quite a few graves, and a lot of them are unknown. So are there actual graves there? I don't know. And this says Jewish Cemetery and Memorial. So I don't know if it's down that trail or what. So thanks for joining me today in the infamous or famous Boot Hill Cemetery in Tombstone, Arizona. I hope you enjoyed it. Not exactly sure if you learned something or not. At least you learned that maybe some of all these graves are not exactly real. It's a very interesting tourist attraction. The whole town of Tombstone is, and it draws thousands of visitors each year. As always, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you guys next time.